second time, and I call the Assistant Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's with great pleasure I join this debate on the Social Security Amendment, More Generous Means Testing for Youth Payments Bill, but also it's great pleasure that I follow my good friend and colleague, the member for Grey, who spoke very eloquently and made the case about the unique barriers which confront regional families when it comes to helping their children go on to achieve their full potential. And like the member for Grey, one of my great motivations in even running for Parliament was to make sure that I could do my bit to help young people achieve their full potential in Gippsland or in other parts of regional Australia. It's a great pleasure I'm here today to participate in this debate on some positive news, but I hasten to add I still regard the area of student income support and youth allowance more generally as a policy area of unfinished business where there's more work to be done. But the bill before the House does provide more generous means testing arrangements for youth payments, and the changes will help regional and rural families to better support the transition of their children from school through to further study, including those children who continue to study beyond Year 12. And as the member for Grey indicated, around 1,200 families from regional and remote areas will be eligible for an increase in payment from the removal of the family actual means test, and they're also expected to benefit from the removal of the family assets test. This change, in particular for farming families, will mean their farm assets are not will not have their farm assets counted toward the test for their children accessing youth allowance. And all families currently subject to the family assets test and the family actual means test will benefit by a reduced regulatory burden. So this is a great win for many regional MPs who have lobbied for change in this area. In addition, some children from regional and remote areas who often face the higher study costs associated with moving away from home will benefit with an increase in their rate of youth allowance, and while we'll see others who actually qualify for youth allowance for the first time, with some of them able to access payments of more than $7,000 a year. The bill follows a great deal of hard work by the member for Grey and many others, but also I'd like to acknowledge the Victorian Senator Bridget McKenzie, who was part of the Interdepartmental Committee on Access to Higher Education for Regional and Remote Students and was one of the driving forces behind the changes we see before the House today. Deputy Speaker, removing complex and unnecessary means tests and improving the operation of the perennial income test is a good first step in responding to the concerns that have been raised by parents in relation to the means testing, and will also assist with the level of participation of young regional people in tertiary studies. And while the changes are great news, they certainly boost the number of families that the government will assist, and that level of assistance will encourage more young people into study to help build their careers, which will have an important economic contribution and a major boost to the skills base of regional communities. Deputy Speaker, I look at the speaking list for today's bill and I note of the 20 MPs listed to speak, every one of them is regionally based. And it's an important point to make, Deputy Speaker, because this is an issue which does tend to divide this House on the basis of city versus country. And as I said in my opening comments, I regard this very much as unfinished business. There is still work to be done. The reason that so many country MPs or regional MPs are speaking on this bill is because they recognise that there is still a great deal of work to be done. And I'd encourage my city-based colleagues in this place on both sides of the House to take the time to try and understand this issue, because it is a complex issue. This is, as the member for Grey quite indicated in his comments, this is not an issue of children making the choice to live in rural and regional communities. It's a decision that their parents have made, and the children then find themselves at a significant disadvantage when it comes to furthering their career options. This is about helping young regional people achieve their dreams. This is about making sure that young people in our regional communities are not having a barrier placed in front of them which we can reasonably address in this place. The system of student income support as it stands today, Deputy Speaker, is still broken. And what we're doing with the changes before the House today is a very important step, but it doesn't change the fundamental concerns I have with the issue of access for young people in regional communities who are forced to move away from home to attend university. It is a totemic issue for regional MPs across the party divide. What we see right now, Deputy Speaker, is a direct wealth transfer from the pockets of regional families into the city-based landlords or the city-based universities. I fear, Deputy Speaker, that we're still failing to grapple with the fundamental concerns that many of the regional MPs have about this issue. At the heart of it, Deputy Speaker, there are 2 points when it comes to the underperformance or the under-involvement of regional students in university. 2 key aspects. One is the aspirational barrier. We need to get better in our regional communities as leaders in our regional communities in encouraging young people in regional towns to aspire to achieve great things in their lives. That's a challenge for us to address in our regional communities. The other one, Deputy Speaker, is an economic barrier. And the economic barrier is something we can do something about in this place. We can help regional families overcome some of the cost barriers that are placed in their way when their children are forced to move away from home to attend a course and improve their skills. The economic barriers we're talking about, Deputy Speaker, are the costs on top of the costs that every other student faces. The member for Grey mentioned the HEC system, and every student will have the opportunity to defer the payment of their course costs through the HEC system. But a young person moving from Gippsland to attend University in Melbourne faces additional costs. The additional costs of rent, of living in a residence, of travelling back and forward from home, sometimes 3 and 4 hours, if they still want to return and be part of their family life back in that community. The magnitude of those costs, Deputy Speaker, is somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 to $20,000 per year. That's $15,000 to $20,000 of after-tax income, which has been directly transferred from a regional family into the city. And I think it's something that this House can do more to address in the future. I have a very different view, I guess, to some members on this issue of student income support, because I don't regard this as a welfare issue or as a social security issue. I regard this as fundamentally an issue about fairness and an issue about access. If we don't have the capacity in Australia to establish regional universities, to establish university courses within close proximity of all the young people in our community, then we have to make sure we're prepared to assist all regional students who are forced to move away from home to attend the course of their choice. We need to improve access to our nation's universities for regional students who often have no other option rather than to travel many hundreds of kilometres away from their home, away from their support networks, to pursue the course of their choice. It is a social issue in the sense that it makes good sense, because these young people are more likely to return back to their regional communities with the skills they've developed at university, whether it be in the law, in engineering, in health, or some other or teaching, or other sought-after professions. So the bill is a good start, but it's really only a down payment on the complete reform, I think, which is still required, Deputy Speaker. I'm on the public record many times in support of a policy position which the Nationals have developed at a grassroots level. It's been through state conferences and federal conferences of the National Party, and that position is one of a tertiary access allowance. What that means, Deputy Speaker, is any student within reasonable income test considerations, but any student forced to travel in excess of 90 minutes to attend a university will receive some level of support for those living away from home costs, which other members have spoken about. It's a simple recognition of the additional costs which regional families face when forced to send their loved ones, their children, away from home to attend university. We need to do more, Deputy Speaker, to ease the burden not only on the families but on the students themselves, and also on the younger remaining siblings of the family members, which the member for Grey and the member for Parkes also spoke about. We have a situation where families have more than one child at university, or have a child at university and children still at home. The wealth being taken out of that family has a genuine deleterious impact on the children who are remaining at home. And I've had stories put to me by parents where they've had to make a choice between which child they send to university. And, Deputy Speaker, I would suggest that in 2015 we can do a little bit better than that. I mentioned, Deputy Speaker, the impact having this economic barrier has on students themselves. I fear, Deputy Speaker, that our high dropout rate, our high deferment rate for regional students has a lot to do with the pressure we place on these regional children when they move away from home to attend university. And in many ways, Deputy Speaker, my fear is we're actually setting these children up to fail. We have a situation where they are under more pressure than perhaps their city counterparts. For one, these are 17 to 18-year-olds leaving home for the first time. They're setting up a home for themselves for the first time, a long way from their support networks. And because mum and dad don't necessarily have all the resources to support them, they're going to have to work part-time. They're going to have to learn to live in a new city. They're going to have to be able to safely navigate and negotiate their way around that city, but also return home if that's their choice on weekends. And these are the issues that many constituents raise with me on a weekly basis, Deputy Speaker. In fact, when the former Gillard-Rudd government made changes to youth allowance, I think it was around 2009, I had thousands of people, literally thousands of people, sign petitions in protest of the changes that were made. And as the member for Grey indicated, it did lead to quite a significant campaign amongst regional MPs. Eventually, we did force some changes in the original proposal put forward by the then Education Minister, Julia Gillard, and I thank her for being prepared to make some concessions. But we still haven't solved the problem, Deputy Speaker, and I fear that we are still a long way from pulling together the political will in this place. When I refer to the speaking list today and see the 20 members who are speaking on this issue are all regionally based. So again, I encourage my city-based colleagues to look at this issue with fresh eyes and gain perhaps a better understanding of the additional costs and the additional barriers that regional families face when helping their young people achieve their full potential. Deputy Speaker, the point I want to make, perhaps in closing, is in relation to the skills shortage we face in many regional communities. We've had other speakers comment today that undoubtedly the people most likely to set up careers, to open an office, to set up a practice, to use their skills in a regional setting are probably young people who've had experience in that regional community in the first place. We export a lot of great things from our regional communities. In my own electorate of Gippsland, we export dairy products, timber products. We export seafood, horticultural products, beef, lamb, wool, you name it, we export it. But our most precious export is undoubtedly the children we send to university, and we want to bring them back. We want to have the opportunity to bring those children back into the future and bring their skills back to our regional communities. But if we don't invest in them at that young age, at that 17 to 18, 19 through to 21, when they're at university, if we don't invest in them, if we don't help them address that economic barrier, Deputy Speaker, I fear that we will not give them their full opportunity to achieve their absolute best. Now, Deputy Speaker, I'm not one who suggests that going to university is the be-all and end-all, and I certainly support as much investment as the government can afford in trades and other forms of training. But I do agree with the member for Grey, who indicated we have a situation in regional communities where young people place limits on themselves on the basis of knowing what their family can afford. Deputy Speaker, that is a barrier that no young person growing up in Gippsland or other parts of regional Australia should have to place on themselves. I believe we have the capacity in this place, in the coming months and years, to, from at least an economic perspective, address this one barrier for young people who are moving away from home to attend university. We actually have the capacity in this place, the decisions we make, to make a very real difference in young people's lives. Now, I believe we can do better. I'm very heartened by the fact that members opposite from regional communities have spoken in favour of this and other changes in the past, and I'm also heartened by the fact that on this side of the House, amongst my Liberal colleagues and National Party colleagues, there is a unanimous view, a considered and determined view to continue to pursue this issue within the government. I believe, Deputy Speaker, we have great capacity to do better in relation to the level of support we can provide for young people who move away from home to attend university. And just as importantly, Deputy Speaker, I believe we can support their families and we can support the regional communities that they've come from. I believe the legislation before the House today is an important first step, but I will continue to work with members of good faith who share my passion for helping regional students achieve their full potential. I'll continue to work with them in the months and years ahead to ensure we are doing everything we can to allow young people in regional communities the same opportunities, not after anything more, the same opportunities that their city-based cousins and friends can enjoy. I commend the bill to the House.
A member.